Shalom, Israel. Shalom, Yasharahla. This is the brother Nathan coming at you real quick with a quick hit lesson. And Lord willing, this will be edifying, comforting, and exhorting to the hopeful elect of Israel. But first and foremost, as always, I want to start off by giving all honor, glory, and praises unto our power, YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, RAWCHAA, QUATASH. YAHAWAH being the true name of the Heavenly Father in the Paleo Hebrew tongue, meaning He is, He to be, He exists. YAHAWASHI being the true name of the only begotten Son in the Paleo Hebrew tongue, meaning He is salvation. He is the deliverer. He delivers. BAHASHAM RAWCHAA QUATASH in the name of the Holy Spirit. I want to give double honors to the head apostles, to the elders, bishops, teachers of Great Millstone, GMS, who rule well and teach well across the four winds with sound doctrine, to the like-minded brothers, the Akim, who are under the umbrella, pushing the truth in all sincerity across the four winds. All right, shalom. Peace be unto you and your households. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, the house of David, the tabernacle of David, consisting of the 12 tribes of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, Haitians, West Indians, and Israelite foreigners are scattered abroad, those who derive from the seed line of our forefather Jacob through Abraham and Isaac. You make up the 12 tribes of Israel that the Bible speaks of. May you seek repentance and salvation in these latter days. Shalom to the Akim and the YAHAWAH, brothers and sisters tuning in. Now, this is from blacklistednews.com, just released today, okay? As Zelensky and NATO plan to transform post-war Ukraine into a quote-unquote big Israel, right? So it says, now, as you can see, Volodymyr Zelensky, Slovakia, and I believe that's Netanyahu, if I'm not mistaken, Slovakia, that's, if I'm butchering his name, leader of Israel, okay? So now, we're going to go into this right here. It says the NATO-backed Atlantic Council has proposed apartheid Israel as a blueprint for a hyper-militarized Ukraine. It says the paper was authored by Obama's former ambassador to Tel Aviv, now an Israeli spy tech consultant. Now, because it says just 40 days after Russia's military campaign began inside Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told reporters that in the future, his country would be like a quote-unquote big Israel. The following day, one of Israel's top promoters in the Democratic Party published an op-ed in NATO's official think tank exploring how that could be executed, right? So we'll continue down. We'll go further down. Now it says, quote unquote, we cannot talk about Switzerland of the future, the president informed reporters, right? But we will definitely become a big Israel with its own face. That's right, man. So it says, for those wondering what a big Israel would actually look like, Zelensky quickly elaborated on his disturbing prophecy. It says, quote unquote, we will not be surprised that we will have representatives of the armed forces or the National Guard in all institutions, supermarkets, cinemas. There will be people with there will be people with weapons, Ukraine's president said, predicting a bleak existence for his citizens. I am sure that our security issue will be number one in the next 10 years, right? So anticipating this type of conflict and or issues going forward for the foreseeable future, right? So it says going down, it says right here, instead, along with a vision for a heavily militarized Ukraine, the Post emphasized Zelensky's readiness to join NATO, quote unquote, already tomorrow. Right. So again, looking to join NATO, obviously, with submitting their application, okay, and looking to make it official, because already they're getting many forms of aid, right? Military aid, training, weapons, ammunition, funding, so on and so forth, from all different areas of the world, okay? So in particular, a lot of these NATO and EU nations, okay? So we're going to continue, because of course this is they're continuing to use the Ukraine as in this form of a proxy war, right? As they may look to use Taiwan in that same fashion against China. But we'll keep it here on the subject, on the topic. Now, going into this, it says, for NATO's power brokers, however, Zelensky's Slovakia intimated willingness to join the military alliance was perhaps the least remarkable aspect of his statement. Instead, within 48 hours of his comments, the Atlantic Council, NATO's semi-official think tank in Washington, published a roadmap exploring how to transform Ukraine into a big Israel. Right. So the way that the U.S. has taken a liking, right, so much, obviously, the 1948ers, right, okay, and whatnot, and the Balfour Declaration and so on and so forth, their hand in their involvement in Israel, the country, okay, or the nation of Israel, and I should say the land, right, okay, the physical land thereof, because obviously the little hatters, as you can see, okay, are occupying the Holy Land now, okay. But we'll continue on here now, but the point is this: you see how quick the U.S. is quick to jump into that opportunity. Why? Because they were looking to continue to use Ukraine in this war, in this proxy war, and ultimately they're going to use them to deter and keep Russia at bay, which we'll read here. It says, just as U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig presented Israel as, quote unquote, the largest American aircraft carrier in the world that cannot be sunk, quote unquote, Shapiro put, and that's Daniel Shapiro, which is the former, I believe, Secretary of, so I don't want to misquote it, but he was into the Obama administration. It's Daniel Shapiro. I believe his exact position will be listed. Oh, here it goes. Slovakia, yeah. Authored by Daniel B. Shapiro, the former U.S. ambassador to Israel under Barack Obama. Right. Okay, but the point being, going back here, says Shapiro put forward a vision of Ukraine as a hyper-militarized NATO bastion whose national identity would be defined by its ability to protect U.S. power against Russia. Right. So again, right, pumping them up, beefing them up, building them up to where what they could be an ally within NATO to stand up against Russia, right, and to be a power that can ultimately strike Russia as well, right? Because that's what it's all about, man. Not only being a defense for their own interests, but also being able to go on the offensive, right, and in a very quick fashion, right? So you know what? Real quick, let me grab a book precept from the book of Proverbs, chapter 21 and verse 1. It says, the king's heart is in the heart, Salakia, the king's heart is in the hand of the Adawan, the Lord, YAHAWAH B'Hashem YAHWASHI, as the rivers of water. Okay. So again, as the rivers of water, right? You can't control it. Only the Adawan, YAHWAH B'Hashem YAHWASHI, man, can't control it, right? So it says, he turneth it whithersoever he will, right? Again, those currents, man, everything. It's all through the masterful work of YAHWAH B'Hashem YAHWASHI. Therefore, the heart, which is also translates from the Hebrew la'ab, which means your mind, okay? The king's mind, the king's heart, is in the hand of the Adawan. That's right, man. So everything is being controlled by YAHWAH B'Hashem YAHWASHI. He's putting the spirit on these governmental leaders, okay? Military leaders, so on and so forth. All of the bodies, these different bodies of government, okay, throughout the world, all in control by YAHWAH B'Hashem YAHWASHI. Now going back into the article here. Now it says, Israel and Ukraine, old loyal friends, quote unquote. Despite Israel's reluctance to join the Western sanctions campaign against Russia, it has aided Ukraine's military, sending 2 large shipments of defense equipment since February of this year. In the past, however, Israel's support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia has been more than defensive. Back in 2018, over 40 human rights activists petitioned the Israeli High Court of Justice to stop arming Ukraine after members of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion were caught brandishing Israeli-made weapons. Right? Because again, a lot of those neo-Nazis over there, right? They're brandishing weapons, and there have been reports that they're even selling weapons. Okay, even to this very day. But continuing on here, now it says, so obviously they're showing support. Okay. They've had people that were against it, but ultimately they continue to stand, in a way, unofficially with the Ukrainians. And speaking of the Israelis, right? Okay, so we'll continue on now. A little further down. Okay, so obviously you see here, message. Okay, now it says Zelensky, a Ukrainian Jew, quote unquote, okay, was apparently unperturbed by Israel's alleged arming of Nazi elements in his country. Okay, so it says 1 year after his 2019 election, he made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to launch what he called a prayer for peace and to attend an event entitled Remember the Holocaust to Fight Anti Semitism. Right? So, yeah, it went on to, as you can see in this picture here, okay, during a visit in January of 2020 as well. Okay, obviously, right here, wishing Netanyahu, happy birthday, yada yada, so on and so forth. All right, even though per the scriptures, okay, we aren't even supposed to celebrate our birthdays, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, now continuing on down, it says right here, quote unquote, since the escalation in fighting between Kyiv and Moscow in February of this year, dozens of Israelis have traveled to Ukraine to join the country's foreign legion. Right. Again, saying, yeah, they're joining them, ready to fight against the Russian army. Right. So that's obviously a stance that's very strong. Okay. Because ultimately that's going to lead to what? Further conflict. Right. That's going to lead to further conflict, especially in this time where Russia they're not in a position where they have to worry about what these countries are really doing. They have the upper hand, if you will, man. They have more military might. Their alliances are strong. They're sustaining their own economies and so on and so forth, man. Between the BRICS nations and all their allies, they're really in a position of being able to dictate the terms, if you will, right? So that's why these devils are ultimately being pumped up, if you will, right? Being puffed up and thinking that they can take these positions to try to take down the bear, pursuant to Ezekiel chapter 38. Russia, being the bear, being that guard unto the other nations, man. Okay. Now we're going to continue on here in the article. I'll dive into some more scriptures here in a second. Now this goes into it says a hyper-militarized apartheid state as a model for Ukraine, right? Because again, now they you're going to pull up some key points here real quick. Now it says, according to Shapiro, a central component of Israel's security strategy is that the whole population plays a role. Now it says civilians recognize their responsibility to follow security protocols and contribute to the cause. He wrote of the Israeli population. Some even arm themselves, though under strict supervision, to do so. The widespread mobilization of Ukrainian society in collective defense suggests that the country has this potential. Right? So look, it says these comments align directly with Zelensky's prediction that in a future Ukraine, people with weapons will be present in nearly every aspect of civilian life. Right? So they're looking to arm people to the teeth, man, and have them like the Wild West, in a way. Well, in a sense that they're going to be able to regulate, to what they feel is right and lawful, right? But at the end of the day, we know how that's turned out. We know the abuse of power that the Israelis have shown amongst their own people, but in particular against the Palestinians. Okay, we know how one-sided, okay, it can be over there in that area. When people are unjustly put into positions of power, right? But we'll continue on here. Now it says, I'm just scrolling further down. Slack you for the way here. So this is interesting here. So it says, like the propaganda touting Israel's success as a security state, Shapiro's blueprint imagined Ukraine's citizenry united as a common purpose, by a common purpose with help from Tel Aviv's high-tech innovation in the military and intelligence sectors. His game plan portrays Israel's advancements in security as an almost mythical achievement owing purely to the feisty, innovative spirit of its citizens, overlooking the single greatest material factor in its success, unprecedented levels of foreign military assistance, particularly from the U.S., right? So puffing themselves up. thinking they got there on their own, thinking that they're able to come to the success and to their current state of being as a nation, right? Militarily, as far as their governmental body and as a whole, right? Without, thinking that they got there on their own, right? And puffing themselves up, and they're very proud, right? Undermining the assistance, because they're basically a little brother to the U.S., right? The U.S. is always pumping billions upon billions of dollars out there. As we'll read, says, indeed, without U.S. taxpayers virtually subsidizing its military through yearly aid packages amounting to untold billions of dollars, it is difficult to see how a country the size of New Jersey would have attained the status of the world's leading surveillance technology hub. That's right. Because they've ultimately been able to benefit, not only from military, from fiscal means, from packages of billions upon billions of dollars going towards mainly military aid, but also personnel themselves, right? Just guys like this, like Daniel Shapiro, right? Went over there as a consultant, right, and helped develop different types of technologies, as we will go into read now. Okay, now it says it here, Shapiro must have forgotten that principle when he tweeted, thank God Israel has Iron Dome, right? A reference to Israel's air defense system that U.S. taxpayers funded to the tune of $1 billion in 2021 alone, on top of $3.8 billion in military assistance earmarked for Tel Aviv that year. That's right, man. So they're receiving tons and tons of funding, right? So again, this being more or less a direct ally, well, of course, a direct ally of the U.S., Babylon, America, but also a strong, the U.S. has to take a strong interest, okay, because they have so much invested into the Israeli nation, right? Okay, into the land of Israel, right? Now, we're going to go down, let's see. See this over here. Shapiro also emphasized that Ukraine will need to upgrade its intelligence services in a similar manner to Israel, which has invested deeply in its intelligence capabilities to ensure that it has the means to detect and deter its enemies, and when needed, act proactively to strike them. That's right. So not only to up their defense capabilities and deter them from an attack, but also to actively strike them, okay, to go on the offense. So as you see him here, this is a conference, okay, of the Israeli Institute for National Security Studies, 2016. Okay, so again, that's when he was, the ambassador, okay, under the Obama administration. Now, continuing down, okay, I don't want to make this too long, but Lord willing, again, I'll push through this real quick. This is says Shapiro, okay. Now it says. It says in mid-2017, after opting to remain with his family in Israel rather than return to the country that had employed him as a diplomat, he joined the Israeli tech firm NSO, hacking firm, as an independent advisor. There, Shapiro helped evaluate potential clients for NSO's notoriously invasive digital spyware known as Pegasus. That's right. If brothers and sisters look into Pegasus, okay, the Pegasus program. That is malware, spyware, right? That's definitely invasive and it's spyware. Okay, it's definitely highly used in espionage, and many reports have come out about the Pegasus program. And I'd recommend, if brothers and sisters want to check that out, look into that. Yeah, the Pegasus program goes deep, and they've used that to to infiltrate many different officials, government officials, and all throughout the world. And it's definitely linked to many different, it's definitely changed the game, if you will. I'll say that. I don't want to say too much and get another strike here. But so we'll continue on here though. So it says, okay, obviously, so Shapiro having close ties to the to that government, but ultimately, again, so helping to build up, under the Obama administration, right, helping to build up Israel in that sense as well. Now coming back to have ties and to aid, in this time where they're doing the same thing with the Ukrainians, right? Okay, so of course this goes into Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, everyone who's benefiting off of these war efforts, man. These contracts, right? And even like for instance, I believe there's a large contract that was received. With Boeing. Yeah, it says though Boeing suffered 2 consecutive quarterly losses in 2022, by July it claimed to be building momentum for recovery. In June, the aerospace giant secured a contract to supply heavy lift helicopters to Germany's government after Berlin created a $107 billion fund for military investment in direct response to the Ukraine war. That's right. So these companies are benefiting, man. Okay. It's all lucrative, man. And a lot of these people are created funds and whatnot and are taking a look at what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, countries like Japan and countries elsewhere, and they're making efforts to acquire, military resources and or technology, right? Just a few examples: countries like Canada, countries like Switzerland, and many different countries who are ultimately acquiring and upgrading different forms of military technology and or might. Okay, so I don't want to run through that, be getting into a Gears of War lesson in the coming days, because a lot of things are moving. Okay, a lot of things are moving, but this in particular I had to bring out because this is something that just came out obviously today. This now being Wednesday the 21st, and came out earlier this morning, technically just within the past couple hours, but I want to follow up on it. So again, you get the point here now. Okay, so Ukraine looking to build themselves up, and they ain't looking to back down. They're looking to make themselves a power, right? And they're receiving much aid, assistance, and whatnot, right? And this is something that again is they're being built up and puffed up, man. They're by these other nations, by the NATO, EU nations, Babylon, America. Okay, they're looking to puff them up and build them up. This is Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 27. An ungodly man diggeth up evil, and in his lips there is as a burning fire. Sorry, man. So these ungodly devils, okay, they're digging up evil, man. They're gonna reap that, and they're looking to, as the old saying goes, misery loves company, right? If I go down, I'm taking you with me, so on and so forth, man. So they know that in their efforts, man, they're gonna try to gain as many allies, and ultimately they're gonna use these other countries, in proxy efforts, and they see them as expendable. At the end of the day, they see them as expendable if they're willing to do some damage, take some licks, and or help in the effort, right? They see them as expendable. But I'm gonna continue on here in Proverbs 16:28, especially in the sense that Ukraine is not technically a NATO member, or well, I'll continue on here. Proverbs 16:28. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. So a froward man, froward also going into, actually, let's just pull that out, just for edification's sake.
Strong's H8419, tapucha. Tapucha.
Tapucha, right? So from the Strong's Hebrew, going into perversity, perverse. Yeah, that's the spirit. Yeah, I want to make sure and get that right when I said perverse. Perversity or fraud, right? Okay. Now it says, soweth strife, right? Strife, problems, right? Creates problems for others, man. Instigators. That's one type of a froward man or woman that could sow strife, right? Starting problems all the time for other people, right? Or between other people, I should say. Like I said, and a whisperer separated chief friends. As a one can separate the best of friends, right? Can create problems between people that may get along, or just make things worse, right? It's Proverbs 16:29. A violent man enticeth his neighbor and leadeth him into the way that is not good, right? So, violent man, the bloody man, Esau of Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, okay? And all these devils that are a part of the council, okay, whatnot, these NATO EU nations, right? Okay, they're all part of that agenda, man. So they're enticing their neighbors, right? They're enticing other nations, other countries, right? It says, and leadeth him into the way that is not good. right? So does Ukraine really stand a chance when it comes to Russia? You know, no, they don't. But they're being built up, right? And they're being supplied and so on and so forth by, again, by the rest of these NATO EU nations and allies of Babylon America. And I'll finish up here in Proverbs 16 and 30. He shutteth his eyes to devise froward things. Moving his lips, he bringeth evil to pass. And that's exactly what's going to come to pass, right? It is coming to pass. And it's just a matter of time before the Heavenly Father puts the spirit on these nations to escalate it further and further. There's been, of course, reports and or speculation that that Russia may ultimately nuke or send missiles or bomb the nuclear power plant that the Ukraine has. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the power plant there in the Ukraine, the nuclear power plant, is the largest in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Now, so the point being is just, these devils are trying to build up and use Ukraine in this proxy effort, and they're going to bring evil, ultimately upon themselves, man. So as you can tell with the reaction from Vladimir Putin, right? This is APnews.com reports. This is 5 minutes ago, but this is early Wednesday morning. Okay, now it says Putin sets partial mobilization in Russia, threatens enemies. Right, so it says Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday announced a partial mobilization in Russia as the war in Ukraine reaches nearly 7 months, and Moscow loses ground on the battlefield. Putin also warned that the West that it's not a bluff, quote unquote, that Russia would use all the means at its disposal to protect its territory. Right? We know they got them Satan II missiles. We know they got them hypersonics. We know that they're armed to the teeth, as they say, man, with all them missiles, all them hypersonic ICBMs, and they've obviously made it very clear. Okay, this is not a bluff. They're willing to go. It says the total number of reservists drafted in the partial mobilization is 300,000. Officials said 300,000 troops are going to be mobilized. Reservists going to be mobilized. Now it says the Russian leader's televised address to the nation comes a day after Russian-controlled regions in eastern and southern Ukraine announced plans to hold votes on becoming integral parts of Russia. That's right, and that's something that the, obviously that wasn't, they were looked at in the eyes of the EU, right, and whatnot. They're looked at as war crimes, okay, and NATO, if you will, that much. So yeah, those are being looked at as war crimes, actually, from what I read in a different report. Now it says the Kremlin-backed efforts to swallow up 4 regions could set the stage for Moscow to escalate the war following Ukrainian successes. All right, so they're gonna get ready and beef up these front lines and really start getting busy. Now it says Putin accused the West in engaging in quote unquote nuclear blackmail and noted quote unquote statements of some high-ranking representatives of the leading NATO states about the possibility of using nuclear weapons of mass destruction against Russia. Right? Now it's in response, quote unquote, to those who allow themselves such statements regarding Russia, I want to remind you that our country also has various means of destruction and for separate components and more modern than those of NATO countries. And when the territorial integrity of our country is threatened to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal, Putin said. And once again, he added, it's not a bluff, right? It's not a bluff. They mean business. They about that action, boss, right? Okay, but it's all in the timing of YAHAWASHI, YAHAWASHI, okay? It's all part of the Lord's script, okay? That's why these ICBM and hypersonics have yet to be shot off, right? Why? Because biblical prophecy must take place. And the MOTB, pursuant to Revelation chapter 13, okay, those things must come into play first before the third woe kicks off, right? We've seen skirmishes and obviously some conflict, I think it's Armenia, and I don't want to chop that, the country's name, Yeah, let me grab the Azerbaijan. Okay, I don't want to. Yeah, it's Azerbaijan. Okay, so the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Many different conflicts and things heating up on different in different arenas, if you will, different platforms, right? Because the world is a stage right now, and it's all YAHAWASHI YAHAWASHI script. So he's got things cooking in different regions, okay? But it's all beautiful through the spirit of YAHAWASHI YAHAWASHI. Because as the scriptures say, you will hear wars and rumors of wars, okay? And of course, seeing earthquakes in diverse places these days, right? Many, a lot of action. But I'm going to continue on, stay on point, stay on the topic. Now it says, quote unquote, we are talking about partial mobilization, that is, only citizens who are currently in the reserve will be subject to conscription. And above all, those who served in the armed forces have a certain military specialty and relevant experience. Right? So again, 300,000, right? So it says, Putin said that the decision to partially mobilize was, quote unquote, fully adequate to the threats we face, namely to protect our homeland, its sovereignty and territorial integrity, to ensure the security of our people and people in the liberated territories. That's right. And, it's pretty much the meat off it. That's pretty much the meat off it here. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a couple other things, but you pretty much get the point. All right, that's the bulk of it. But one particular quote that's not in this article that I read. Now it says Russian's defense minister says Russia is fighting not just with Ukraine, but the quote unquote collective West. That's right, man. So they know, man. They know what it is. Okay, they know all these other countries are pumping in ammo, training, in different forms of aid. All right, so yeah, they're seeing this for what it is, and that's why they're continuing to build up their alliances. That's why the beast, this beast system, right? Okay, NATO, EU, battle on America, right? Okay, that's why they know that they're in a lose-lose situation, man. Because they know, ultimately the wicked elites, man, those who know biblical prophecy, man, they know what their end is going to be. Okay? It's going to be the victory of YAHAWASHI YAHAWASHI, the tabernacle of David. I'm going to finish up here. And Nahum, the book of Nahum, chapter 3, and verse 4. Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, which is referring to Babylon, America, right? Okay, her whoredoms, pushing that Western philosophies, quote unquote, right? That Western culture, pushing all of these atrocious ways upon these other nations, right? All the different military bases all throughout the world and embassies all throughout the world and so on and so forth, having such a powerful, enchanting influence, okay, on these other nations, right? And their people, their cultures, so on and so forth, right? So again, I'm going to repeat that. So it says, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, right, also as spoken of in the scriptures, it says the mother of harlots, roughly paraphrasing. Now it's referring to Babylon, America, spiritually Sodom and Gomorrah, spiritually Egypt. Now it says the mistress of witchcrafts, right? Because again, right, the abundance of her enchantments, man, and these witchcrafts, this is how this well-favored harlot has maintained her position. But ultimately, it's been YAHAWASHI YAHAWASHI. This is all part of the script. Okay, continuing on, it says that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. Right, selling nations. Right, giving everything is, they're all through rape, rob, and pillage. Right, all these nations have been tossed to and fro and shuffled around in a deck. Right. Okay. And these elite bankers, man, all these superpowers, man, have continuously, again, man, through rape, rob, and pillage, have amounted these resources and used and abused these different nations and their people for their own gain, and ultimately for their own profit in many different terms. and many different forms of prophet, But I'll continue on here. It says, finish up here in Nahum 3 and 5. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Adawan, YAHAWASHI, the Lord of hosts, the Lord of armies. Now it says, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. That's right. And these devils are being exposed here in the latter days, not only through the truth, okay, through the prophets, the men that are out there on the highways and hedges, teaching and preaching the scriptures, man, the holy scriptures, man, this gospel, this truth, and all in truth and sincerity across four winds. Okay, not only that, but these devils are being exposed by these other nations. Okay, and that's the will of Yahawah to have these devils be cut up and exposed, and ultimately, man, they're gonna perish and go into captivity, man. Okay, so therefore, in particular, Babylon, America, okay, gonna be exposed, right? And the kingdom's thy shame, right? So it's a shameful thing, man, the way that this country has, these devils, man, Esau of Edom, okay, has maintained his power and maintained his grip, right? The serpent. But, their time is soon coming to an end, right? And Ado Amratza would be of that number to be watching from the sea of glass on those chariots, man, okay? As that lake of fire, devours this wicked queendom. All right, so Lord willing, that this lesson was edifying, comforting, exhorting to the whole elect of Israel. Salakia, I don't want to make it too long-winded, but sometimes it's just the spirit. So I'll close out by giving all honor, glory, and praises unto our power, Yahawah, Bahasham, YAHAWASHI, Bahasham, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles, to the elders, bishops, teachers of Great Millstone, GMS, who rule well and teach well across four winds with sound doctrine. To the like-minded brothers, the Akim, who are under the umbrella, pushing this truth and sincerity all on one accord, risking your lives and freedoms to do so. Shalom. Peace be unto you and your households. Peace and salutations of the hopeful elect, the house of David, tabernacle of David. Keep pushing strong, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Akim, Wa. Akyawath, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Close this out with a curse on Babylon. Abad Baal, DTA, soon, real soon. Kwam Yasharahla. Shalom.